I smite the evil with my backpack.
A Dwarf Paladin. I was the DM in the party, Dwarf Paladin, Human Cleric, Elf Wizard, Human Fighter, Dwarf Fighter, and Celestial Bloodline Human Sorcerer/Rogue, holy shit that was a mouthful, had gained the attention of a lieutenant-level henchman of the BBEG. She sent an invitation to parley with her at a house in the city they were in. The party arrives and they are asked to leave their weapons at the door by the orc fighter that was guarding the door. They agreed, but the Dwarf Paladin maintained possession of his backpack, using some excuse about being on the way to a merchant to sell things, which was true. At this point of the campaign, the Paladin was the face of the party and took center seat when the negotiations began. A surreptitious detect evil revealed her alignment as well as the presence of 5 other evil beings within the house. When the henchman got around to her demand, "Give her the party's wizard," the Paladin had had enough of her crap. So he grabbed his backpack and said,
I smite the evil with my backpack.
They ended up winning a surprisingly one-sided fight with a combination of the wizard using a wand of web that she hid from the guards to pin the henchman and one of her guards to a wall, and the sorcerer/rogue using suggestion to convince the guard it was the perfect opportunity to cop a feel on his boss, distracting her from casting spells herself. During the fight, the fighters flipped the table and broke legs off to use as clubs, while the wizard was using that wand to keep the guards in the other rooms out. Fight ended with the wizard having enough of the enemy's crap and using chain lightning on them. Good times.
A friend of mine's character has a shape-shifting skinwalker sort of ability and disguised themselves to be a big, burly dude so they could get into a fight tavern. Character is only 15 or something. Anyway, a little while later, he gets a room to do some shit, and who else than the person he's disguised as walked into the room. Dude's obviously confused as fuck, and player character tries to convince him that he's his long-lost twin brother. Aces his role, and has a heartfelt reunion with his brother, ending the session. Had the whole table laughing their asses off. Unfortunately, the guy decided to take him out in the woods and kill him in the next session. Don't really remember the reason why. Back in the days of 2nd edition, in high school, we played with a guy that, for some reason, was the target of many practical jokes, during the game and out of the game. His name was TC. One game, we needed to look down a tunnel in the ground no one could possibly fit into, and so the wizard shrank TC until he was the size of a mouse. TC goes to investigate the tunnel, and when he was about 5 feet in, one of the other characters announces, "I piss into the hole." Everyone starts laughing. The DM says to TC, "You hear a rushing sound coming down the tunnel, and a yellow tidal wave rushes towards you." TC says, "What?" Yet another character announces, "I shit down the hole," to which we all laugh even harder, and TC says, "No, you bastards!" DM says, "You see big logs floating in the yellow river, which overwhelms you." Lots of stories like that one, LOL. So, one of my D&D characters has a bit of a reputation for making some of the most absurd contraptions possible. She was not a gnome, she was a human fighter with 10 intelligence. The first thing this character did was known as the Death Barrel. So basically, we were in this town, and we knew some cultists were going to have a meeting in this alleyway to do evil cult stuff. So I went down to the shop and bought a basket of exotic butters, a blowgun, a bag of 1,000 ball bearings, an iron pot, a net, several vials of alchemist's fire, 1 barrel, a spoon. So then I loosened the band on said barrel, dumped the ball bearings in, along with about half of the butter. I then used the spoon to mix the two together, creating a barrel full of butter-coated ball bearings. I then go arrive early to the cultist meeting. I go on top of a relatively short building nearby, draping the net down so that part of it is still on top of the building where I'm standing. When the cultists arrive, I simply throw down my alchemist's fire into the net, setting it on fire. The cultists obviously saw and avoided the net, but that wasn't the idea. Since part of the net is still currently on top of the building, I now have a small wall of fire in front of me. So what else could I do besides use the blowgun to fire a stick of butter through the flames at the lead cultist who has just opened a portal? I roll, and of course, critical. He gets nailed in the eye with a flaming stick of butter, blinding him. Next, I take the barrel and throw it through the flame at the cultist. I critical fail, causing it to fly through the flames into the portal. It explodes, and a bunch of flaming ball bearings fire out of the portal, hitting a bunch of cultists. I spend a turn greasing up the bottom of my pot while the rest of the party starts fighting cultists. Before the fire dies down, I jump in the pot, keep off the roof, and use it to surf down the street and slide towards the portal. My friend, who is in the middle of my path, rolls 20 on his deck save to do a sick flip and jump on the pot with me, and we fly through the portal, striking and killing the creature that the cultist was summoning. And that is the story of how a barrel broke the encounter in which our DM was supposed to have us fight an extra-dimensional creature in an alleyway, because some idiot threw a barrel in the portal. Edit. Yes, the exotic butters was a Five Nights at Freddy's reference. I feel unclean, as you should. At this specific point, we were taking just under a year to do a ritual to summon a demon because he was sealed away with an item we needed. Part of the ritual was pulling the still-beating heart at a specific time on the altar of one of the descendants of the original man that sealed him. Only problem, only one descendant existed. No big deal apparently. The guy comes to us. Our party 100% knows we need this guy alive to do this. One of our party members chooses to do lethal damage a bunch and outright kills him. He was basically the only one doing any damage at all. Fuck. Okay. Well, we have X amount of time still. We do some quick calculations and internet research. Using medical skills, we want to impregnate one of the females in the group with his sperm to create another descendant. Bam. Quest complete. One of my personal favorites is from a campaign that a friend of mine was DM of, and several of us were playing in. At some point, I don't even recall how all these years later we ended up in some sort of sewer system and encountered a slime or ooze of some type. We weren't that high level yet and didn't have much in the way of magic, arms, and items. What little we did have, we quickly discovered were not doing any sort of harm to the ooze or slime. Then we realized that the paladin had +3 magical armor, and we had about a 20-foot gap between top of the ooze or slime and the area of the sewer we were in. Proceeded to burn Dimension Door, Fly, Telekinesis, and other such spells on the paladin to put him in the air over the thing and let him slam into it, repeatedly, until it squished dead. The Strange Life and Times of Sir Cornelius Pinecone III of the Pine Hill Pinecones. He is a bugbear who thinks he's a human. He was accidentally mistaken for the real Cornelius as a young child. The real Cornelius was the only son of some very nearsighted nobility who got lost in the woods. His parents found the baby bugbear and assumed it was their child, leaving the biological Cornelius to be raised by bugbears in the wild. Bugbear Cornelius grew up dim-witted and entitled. He is constantly at odds with the chaotic evil alignment of his true bugbear nature and the lawful good alignment he was raised with. So far, in our campaign, Cornelius has convinced himself he is a wizard, faked his way to a law degree, questioned his own nature when an NPC called him a bear, and impregnated many maidens. He is easily the best and most ridiculous character I've ever had the pleasure to play alongside. This comes from a story I saw on YouTube. Forget exactly where, may not have all the details right. Normally you roll 3d6, 46 drop 1, or use a point buy system for your stats. This means most of your stats should be around 8 to 12, since die rolling creates a bell curve. One player asked the DM if instead of the normal methods he could just roll 1d20 for his stats. Of course, the first thing he rolls is a 20, and of course, the next thing he rolls is a 1. So he builds a character like this. It's a Goblin Savant wizard. He stuck the 20 into intelligence. This guy was casting spells with a +5 modifier, very potent, very deadly. He had an intimate knowledge of everything arcane and of all history and spoke 4 or 5 languages. However, he stuck the 1 into con. His wizard started with 2 hit points and gained an anemic 1 hit point per level. He adventured by being carried by 2 other goblins on a stretcher since he was more or less barely alive. He roleplayed as a god-sent prophet destined to bring all goblin civilization into an age of science and magic, but his body could barely contain the knowledge and arcane power bestowed upon him. One day, our DM let us find flasks of oil or booze. I can't remember, but think oil. For some reason. I was a trouble-causing wizard with fire cantrips, but for some reason he didn't pick up on the fact that I was just looking for trouble with these. Later on in the dungeon, we find some parchment of some kind, and I had an idea.
I tear the parchments into rags and use them to plug the bottles of flammable stuff.
DM's eyes widen a little, but he goes, sure, why not? And we went on with the dungeon. They sat in my inventory for some time. Unused. Now, this DM was a real stickler for realism at times, it has to be said. Story was a distant second priority for him. He also did not like going off the rails, and the campaign was very linear. This is important for what happened next. We had an assignment where we headed off to confront a bandit gang. We were told they were all hiding in a rickety old mansion in the south of town. I could see the DM had meticulous maps and presumably endless traps in this giant mansion. Our group would be here for numerous sessions. IRL, I'd had a few beers with the boys. I looked in my inventory and saw something written as Vermilion Soul Cocktails, and suddenly had an idea. Hey, DM, this house is pretty old and dry and rickety, right? Yeah, sure, that sounds about right.
Stand back, everyone!
I said. The DM goes, what are you doing? I take one of the improvised Vermilion Soul Cocktails out of my bag. Okay. I use my fire cantrip to light the rag on fire and toss the bottle into the house. Boom. DM, that highly flammable liquid ought to light that old dry rickety wood on fire, right? Yeah, that would be realistic, but... He struggled for a second, but his realistic nature won out. The flames consume the mansion. Your party watches as the mansion burns to the ground along with numerous bandits. We took a smoke break after that while he threw together a new scenario. Apparently there was a stone trap door that escaped the flames and that turned into a smaller new dungeon, but we never forgot about the time we finished the whole week's dungeon in a few minutes. Side note, that same character in the game world accidentally burned down no less than half a continent.